Hello everyone, welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. I am back from vacation, which I obviously planned around doing the podcast. Would never miss an episode, of course. And, well, did I miss any good anime while I was out?
Well, it's time to get back to work. It's back to the anime minds for you,
What is vacation?
Well, it's a thing where you don't work for a couple of days. It's a very foreign concept.
And then what?
This economy.
Then what? The Pinkertons come after you, and
yeah, something like that.
And then after you come back from your vacation, you realize, oh god, I need a vacation from my vacation.
I'm trying not to think too hard about, like, tomorrow I'm recording on Sunday and tomorrow I'm going back to work. I'm trying not to think too hard about that. But, yeah, so anime, what's I have no idea what's going on. I did watch my bare minimum Call of the Night and Lycroris Recoil, but you know, well,
Look, we're all moving on from Japanese cartoons and have started playing British video games. So.
One could say that what we want out of this season is something a bit meatier.
yeah, we have to break out of the endless now.
well, I don't want to interrupt any. I'm assuming this is all referencing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which has also come out at some point.
Out now for Nintendo Switch.
I will want at some point. I do want to hear all of your worst British accents. But
oh my goodness,
None
will be as bad as ones in the game, and by bad I mean good.
Let's introduce everybody first. I'm Jel, and we are joined by Iro.
I'm not dead yet.
Can you say that British, though?
I'm not dead yet.
Okay, we also have G.
I'm gonna cheat by quoting the character that doesn't have a British accent and say, I'm the guy with the gal.
Give me some of that sweet ether.
I love that.
God, her specific delivery of that one line is... Oh man, some of those lines.
So there are some token Americans in there.
So apparently this is a Xenoblade 2 thing, is that in Xenoblade 2, the way they distinguished between, like, some of the races in Xenoblade 2 is some would have British accents and others would have American accents.
Yes.
Okay. Very foreign and exotic American accents.
Yes, the foreign American accent.
Yeah.
Now in this game, there are even people with Australian accents.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, we're really going all out this time.
And as you've just heard, we are joined by Aqua on this episode.
You hear that, Noah? Lance wants something a bit meatier.
Can't do that. I already referenced that line.
Good,
Gotta
man.
come up with a new one.
That's good. No, it's fine. It's fine. But I mean, it sounds like that game is pretty good.
Yeah, it's
I'm enjoying it.
It's a return to form for the venerated Xenoblade franchise.
Because was two was like the gotcha one, right?
Yeah.
2 was the anime
2 is
one.
where they fully embraced being an anime garbage JRPG.
Yes.
And 3 is where they embraced becoming the type of anime garbage JRPG that I like.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. Look at it from this perspective. Like, the best way to tell them apart is that in, like, the first hour of Xenoblade 2, you're just an average schlub, and then there's a girl with big boobs, and she falls out of the sky, and she becomes hopelessly devoted to you, and the entire game is about your everlasting bond with her, and also her split personality, who is a tsundere.
Yeah.
And then Xenoblade 3, the first hour is literally, we are like child soldiers in a war or a lifespan.
Do you like Starship Troopers?
And we're also like in the bath together, boys and girls, and we don't make an issue out of it because we're like not brainwashed by stupid teenage anime poison, and there's like
instead they're brainwashed to not know what sex is.
Yes.
Again, Aqua, do you like Starship Troopers?
Well,
But no, it's really. I mean, it's. I think the thing is like. I mean, I think a lot of the praise for Xenoblade 3. I don't want to call it like hyperbolic or anything, but I think it is very outspoken. I think because, I think in a lot of ways, Xenoblade 3 kind of represents like a weird triumph in this specific type of JRPG.
Yes.
Like, this is not necessarily going to be the JRPG that transcends borders and genre, right? It's not that. But what it is an unbelievably competent execution of a very familiar style of this experience.
Right.
It feels very much like classic era of JRPGs. Like, I would even dare to compare it to something like Final Fantasy VI. Like,
I mean, I would say down to the mechanics, for better or worse, Xenoblade 3 feels like a PS2 JRPG that just happens to be on a piece of hardware that is marginally more powerful than a PS2.
yes.
It's a PS2 game running on a PS3.
Oh, that's generous to the Switch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, at least it runs perfectly smoothly.
most of
I
the
will
time.
say you can see the adaptive resolution at work anytime it rains.
Yes.
Like anytime you are unlucky enough to be in an in-game cutscene while it is raining.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And like suddenly it looks like you're playing this shit on the 32X or something.
Or when you fast travel to a location and you're like, hey, it's suspiciously empty around here, and then it takes like a minute for the NPCs to spawn in.
But no, like it speaks to the game that like, in spite of any of those like quibbles we have, it's a fundamentally solid experience.
Yeah. Sounds like good times.
And it has the best kind of writing and localization in that it's not necessarily like well written, but it's just intensely quotable and memeable.
I mean, that is the thing. Like, Xenoblade 3 feels like the first post-social media Xenoblade in the ways that, like, for example, Yakuza 0
Yes.
found success because of, places like Twitter were able to amplify the most, like, memorable moments.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Like
I've got
them
so
trying to
many-
say,
Yeah.
like them trying to say water.
Water. I've got so
Look,
many.
man, are you
little
someone who
videos
pronounces
and
it
screenshots.
water? Are you someone who pronounces it water? Or are you someone who
Water.
pronounces it water?
Yeah.
That's the most important, like, not binary, but trinary, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah. Well.
Yep.
Sounds like good times. I have no Xenoblade experience, but that one is the first time I was like, I kind of want to try that game. But
Hang out
Yeah.
with your Cockney elf party member.
Would you call her an elf?
She was kind of an elf equivalent.
Yeah, the high NT are
I
like
guess-
elf equivalents.
Alright, sure, fair enough. Because, to be fair, there are characters in that game with actual points.
Right,
of
yes.
Sure.
So,
But I mean, the high NT are obviously elves. They are the elevated
Yes,
race. They
Elf
they
adjacent.
rule. They live for a very long time. They are
Sure,
cultured.
Do
like,
magic.
yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, let's, I guess, move on and talk about some actual anime.
Let's press on
And-
and on and on.
We have quite a few things, different things to talk about this episode. And maybe we'll start with, G, you saw the new Dragon Ball movie
yes,
yesterday.
I saw the very well-named Dragon Ball Super, superhero. Say that again. Dragon Ball Super, superhero.
Oh,
Super
man.
Saiyan God, Super Saiyan.
Yeah, well, how was that?
It was good. It was solid. I actually came away from it. Again, I will admit, I think for me, and that as an American Dragon Ball fan, which means I primarily grew up with Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball was a thing I became familiar with after the fact. I think I was always going to go into a movie like this with somewhat tempered expectations, because I kind of knew just based on the trailers that this was not going to be, the type of Dragon Ball movie that I was looking for. That would be Brawly, the previous
Right.
Dragon Ball movie, which was just, 80 minutes of meaty men just punching each other.
Right.
But I think Super works within the type of story it is trying to tell, which is it is an inherently goofier adventure. It is, it feels a little bit more Dragon Ball, right? I mean, the plot is even Dragon Ball adjacent, right? It is about the revival of the Red Ribbon
Dragon
Army.
Ball as opposed to Dragon Ball Z.
Yes. I mean, yes. When I say Dragon Ball with no letter attached to the end, assume I am talking about the original manga/anime adventure.
Right.
About Son Goku and Bulma and this fucking pig. But yeah, no, I had a pretty good time with it. I think it acquits itself well. Like once you accept like what kind of story it is going to be.
Right.
I think that the CG is it's noticeable all the way through. Like there's never really a moment in that movie where you like almost get fooled into not noticing it. It's not quite there yet,
Yeah.
We're still figuring out the technology. But I do think there's still some pretty big flashy moments. I think it is fun to have a movie that is not just purely focused on Goku and Vegeta, right? The movie is primarily focused on Piccolo and Gohan.
Okay.
And sort of
Sounds good to me.
their struggle against the villain of the movie.
The actual best dad in
Yes, and the thing is like this movie actually does a fairly good job of poking fun at that and acknowledging that like in a lot of ways Piccolo is Gohan's real dad.
They ask Piccolo to babysit Pan, not Goku.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I
the
definitely trust Piccolo more to
Yes, the movie literally does in fact open with Piccolo babysitting Pan.
Right.
And then later like getting also this is a movie in which Piccolo owns a cell phone, which is
That's
hilarious
wild.
to me.
Yeah, I thought his ears were good enough to hear anything on the earth.
It's low-key extremely funny. Well, here's the thing. They sort of do a play
Okay,
on that.
all
Where,
right.
like, Piccolo is, like, levitating and, like, meditating on a fucking, like, mountain.
As he does.
And, like, 100 miles away is his cell phone, which is ringing.
He just goes like,
So-
ugh,
He's just like,
when your phone is
damn it.
across the room.
right.
Has to fly all the way back to pick up the cell phone.
That's pretty good.
It literally opens with, like, Videl, like, calling Piccolo and be like, oh, shoot, I'm really sorry, something came up, and I can't pick up Pan. Can you go do it for me? And Piccolo's like, where the fuck is Gohan?
Right.
Like, I thought she had a second parent. And, like, she's like, oh, but Gohan's just so busy being a salary man these days, or,
a
a
scholar
fucking
or
nerd.
whatever.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, and...
Have your
literally,
green
like, the joke is,
grandpa
like,
pick you up from school.
Videl is like, well, how about I get you a really nice snack to eat? And Piccolo's like, how many times do I need to tell you people, the Namekians don't
They
eat
don't
food.
eat, yeah. They survive
Yeah.
on sunlight or whatever.
And so, yeah, it's that kind of movie, right? It's having fun with the years and years of Dragon Ball.
Sure.
Like, in a lot of ways, I would say thematically the movie is more about Piccolo, but when it comes to the action scenes themselves, Gohan is probably the one who shines more.
Okay.
But the thing I think they do well with Piccolo in that movie is, like, it is sort of a celebration of Piccolo's legacy as, like, this weirdo,
Right.
like, once enemy, now ally, who has, like, a dozen random powers because Toriyama just kept giving Piccolo new powers because
Right.
he didn't know what else to do with the character.
Exactly.
Like, there is literally a moment towards the climax of the movie where Krillin, who, was there to witness the climactic battle between King Piccolo and Gohan in the World Tenkaichi,
Goku, yeah.
where Krillin is like, Piccolo, don't you remember
turn
what
big?"
you did? And Piccolo's like, huh,
Guess you're right.
oh yeah, I can't do that.
He did do a bunch of weird ass shit back in the day. Turn big,
And the last thing
stretchy
I'll
arms.
say, the last thing I say, which I will not spoil because I think this is actually the one moment in the movie that I think they really do cash in all their chips.
Okay.
There is a thing that happens at the very end of the movie. There is something that Gohan does at the very end of the movie that kind of had me a little misty-eyed as a DBZ fan.
Okay.
Because it is some could say that what Gohan does at the end of this movie is the culmination of Dragon Ball recognizing who Gohan sees as his true father figure.
Okay.
Okay, do not confirm or deny what I'm about to say, but this is what immediately popped into my mind when you said that.
What?
Is we do a reversal of when Nappa fired the energy blast at Gohan and Piccolo jumps in the way. Instead, somebody's shooting an energy blast at Piccolo and Gohan jumps in the way. Do not confirm nor deny.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Look, does someone at some point say, "He may have been your father, but I'm your daddy"?
Not quite, but there is a lot of Piccolo is the dad who stepped up energy in this movie.
Right. Well, this can't be the only time they've resurrected the Red Ribbon Army, right?
No, it's not.
No, multiple movies.
Okay, I was gonna say I feel like we've done
those
that
assholes are all over the place.
No, the only like weird thing I would say like that this does slightly different is like they reveal that Dr. Gero had a grandson.
Oh, okay.
And that apparently
isn't that an Android 21 thing?
So this is the thing I gotta ask you, Ira, if you know
Isn't
about
his
this.
son like 116? So,
yeah, okay, because they show Dr. Gero's family tree, and his son is Android 16.
That's interesting,
but
because that was plot stuff that they established in Fighters, is my understanding. That Android 16 is like an Astro Boy to Dr. Gero's son.
Right, it has to be an Astro Boy thing, right? Because it's Android 16 is fully robotic.
Yes.
He's not actually an android like 17 and 18, so okay.
Yeah. Hey, Android 21's real popular.
Yeah,
Make her canon, why not?
Apparently, Dr. Gero has a god-tier dick game, because Dr. Gero, who is this, like, horrible, wrinkly crone of a man, managed to lay pipe with, like, maybe the second or third hottest Dragon Ball character.
Wait, who's number one?
It's 18.
Oh, yeah, true.
Understandable, that's fair.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I'm not going to argue with that one. All right. Well, that sounds fun. I have to catch up because
it is fun. It is fun.
I have to catch up because I think I only saw like the first Super movie.
Broly,
which was
there was one before that with
Beerus?
Oh, Battle of Gods or whatever.
Yeah.
There's the Battle of Gods. There was Resurrection F, and then there was. See, but those were not Super brand. Those were still Z branded.
Okay.
Oh, were they?
Were they?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then maybe I haven't seen the Super ones then, but yeah, I'll have to catch up at some point. I'm sure it'll appear on streaming or something at some point here. It's Dragon Ball, so.
Yeah. No. I guess my capstone on this would just be say that like if you like Dragon Ball or if you could appreciate all of the facets of Dragon Ball, both the Z-oriented fighting stuff, but also the Dragon Ball, comical adventure stuff. I think Superhero broadly justifies its runtime.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's move along to a couple other things we have on here.
Now that we're on the topic of shows made for 7-year-olds.
Yes, I get in a way, perhaps we could have included that. So while we have,
I mean, multiple of these properties are all owned by Toei.
Yeah. Do Superhero time block.
So while we have one of our Toku experts here on the panel with Aqua joining us,
it's not too bad of a number.
Time for some super sort of kids show time.
Hooray!
Oh, because the first one is not for kids.
Yeah, so we mentioned last time we were going to talk about Fuuto PI, which came out a couple weeks ago.
Yes,
sort of a mid-season drop, and Fuuto PI, of course, is a anime, but it is a continuation of a Kamen Rider series.
Yeah, it's a sequel to Kamen Rider Double, which was the Kamen Rider series that aired in 2011.
Is it 2011?
Yeah,
I think so, yes. 2010, 2011, something like that. And it is based on a manga continuation that was started a couple years ago by the original author of Kamen Rider Double, who is Rico Sancho, whom was originally a mangaka. He started out as the mangaka of, amongst others, Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai. They then brought him in to do Kamen Rider Double, and now he's sort of like going back to manga to pen a continuation, which is now getting an anime adaptation.
I don't believe he drew any of those manga, but
no, he did not. He's a writer. Yes, yeah. And so Fuuto PI is basically, it just picks up where Kamen Rider Double left off. So Kamen Rider Double's whole idea was that it was sort of like a send-up of noir detective kind of stories, but at the level of for kids, of course. So our main hero is this Shotaro Hidari, who is a private detective who fancies himself a hard-boiled cool guy. You know, he wears the waistcoat, he wears the fedora, but he's actually just kind of like a blowhard idiot. And he works together with his partner, who is a boy/guy named Philip, named after Philip Marlowe. And Philip is basically human Google. So he has the special ability to tap into the consciousness of the Earth and can basically know all of history as long as he has certain leads to follow. So the entire story is usually about a monster is attacking and they need to find out what the true identity of the monster is. Because in Grand Kamen Rider tradition, the monsters are always humans transforming into monsters. In this case, with a special kind of like drugs called Gaia memories, which are being spread throughout the city by dangerous dealers. So they always need to identify, which type of monster are we dealing with here, who is behind it, and how can we stop them. That's what most of the main mysteries are about. And this show actually sort of perfectly mirrors that idea. There's always, a monster attacking. They need to hunt down some clues so that Philip gets enough leads to go on so he can sort of dive into his mind palace and figure out the true identity of the monster and how to stop it. And in that way, it does a pretty good job. Like it perfectly mirrors the sort of structure of the original show. It sort of mirrors the character dynamics, even though it's all sort of kind of a bit flatter. It's a bit duller. And that has to do with the medium, right? Because the original show was a tokusatsu show for children, which means it has a lot of slapstick. It had a lot of overacting. It had these actors giving them all they're all to do their most exaggerated goofy faces and clownish poses that they could come up with. And in anime it's all just a bit more serious, a bit more they have some of the edges filed off. It's all a bit nicer and neater, but as a result it's not as charming as it is in live action.
But now there's boobs.
Yes.
Yeah, but now we got tits.
Right.
So it makes
so
up
they
for
try
it,
to
right?
make up for that by making this aimed at a more mature audience, and in some way that makes sense because the original show aired 10 years ago. But on the other way, it's more mature in the most annoying, least thought out way possible, as in. There's a character with big boobies, and they bounce every time she walks, and she's a femme fatale because she takes a bath in the public fountain, and she's such a seductress, and she has mysterious powers, and it's just kind of babies first, mature.
Okay, so then I gotta ask then, right? There is an obvious comparison here. Why is it not working in Fuuto PI, but these exact sorts of descriptions are what gives Garo its appeal?
Garo was always, I think, meant to be this sort of dumb, edgy thing.
Yes.
From the beginning, whereas Kamen Rider is still sort of for 7-year-olds.
Yes. And the thing is, in Garo, everyone is a character who is cool and edgy. Whereas in Kamen Rider, they're all dorks, and then there's also hot booby femme fatale lady. So like
I
it
see.
doesn't really work.
Right.
Right. Even
No.
even like if you're referring to the Garo anime, I'm assuming the original Garo like live action is still like
Oh,
Like
no,
that.
Garo live
Or-
action is also like late night TV with like, we got these
Right.
AV actresses with their boobs out. Like,
right,
yeah. I mean, original TV Garo is also quote unquote mature. Like,
not for
Right.
children.
Yeah,
So I will
right.
point out that, like, when this manga first started, the 7-year-olds who were watching Kamen Rider Double would have been 13 or 14.
they're now
Yes.
adults.
And therefore,
right.
Yes.
so not even adults, but 13 or 14, and therefore the perfect target audience for
The prime age for it, yes.
she's got the boobs.
yes.
But it is egregious in
Yes.
this show. Holy shit. It's comical.
So like the weird thing with like the femme fatale character Tokime is she's like a character they're setting up to be despised by the fan base because of several reasons. Like first of all, she is clearly a like blatant attempt to make the show horny. Which is something that not many people will appreciate, I guess. And otherwise, also, like she's also clearly being set up as like the new assistant for the main character, even though that entire original show like was based on the dynamic between Shotaro and Philip, with all of the vibes that we usually associate with anime about intense relationships between two hot men. So
Right.
it's clear they don't really know what to do with Tokime, because she's supposed to be the femme fatale, but otherwise she's also supposed to be sort of like, oh, she doesn't know anything about the world, and she's trying so hard to help Shotaro being a detective. So she has to be like all kinds of characters in one. And when push comes to shove, they still prefer having Shotaro and Philip around, because these are, of course, the original characters that people love, and they're also the characters who have to solve every case because they are Kamen Rider. So it's a bit of a weird situation, but that doesn't make
So-
the show frustrating. I think it's still pretty interesting and entertaining to watch. Like,
So is it even worth watching if you have none of the Kamen
that's
Rider
tough
context?
to say. That's tough to say. Like, they're clearly putting in a lot of effort to make it a very cinematic show. It's well directed. It has enormous production values. The Kamen Rider fights look great. Like, as soon as we saw this anime announcement, we were immediately like, oh yeah, okay, sure, but Kamen Rider is going to be CG. But he's not. He's hand animated. Everything's hand animated. So
Yeah, I've seen some clips.
Yeah.
It's pretty slick.
it looks
Yeah.
pretty damn good. On the other hand, there are constant references to the show, and not just to the show's premise, but to the entire show. Like, there are
Specific events. Right.
bit characters from the show who show up again. There are like victims of the week who show up again. There are references to the entire plot of the original show. And in a way, it is easy to get someone into Fuuto PI, because you can just say, oh, he's a pseudo hardball detective, he's a human Google. Together they turn into a robot guy who fights things, and they fight evil drugs that turn people into monsters. Like, that's the show. But on the other hand, like on the micro-textual level, there are a lot of assumptions that you are intimately familiar with the original show in Fuuto PI. Which makes it very weird to have this licensed, because the original Kamen Rider Double was never licensed.
Right.
The only way to watch it is through less than legal means.
I think they
Right.
have the first
So-
2 episodes on their YouTube channel or something.
Yes, yeah, but that's it. Like,
Yeah. I'll say, as somebody who does not watch Kamen Rider Double, but has watched other Kamen Riders, and who watches the show with 2 people who have watched Kamen Rider
Yes.
Double, I've been enjoying it so far.
yeah.
Okay.
I think my favorite thing about the show is actually like how the backgrounds are still totally just all of the same stock locations in Tokyo where they filmed this shit, just anime-ified.
They just drew them. Yeah.
Right, I
Yes.
go like, oh, it's that one overpass, it's that one
that's-
plaza.
that is pretty good.
It's
That
That
definitely
shows up in
one
every
place.
single Kamen
Yeah.
Rider show, yeah.
Or just every 5
Wow.
weeks we're having another fight here. And I think that's funny.
That is pretty good.
But that's not like,
All right. Well,
that's not an indicator of quality storytelling or anything. You know?
I mean, but at some point, Taku is such a monolithic thing that at that point, that kind of stuff becomes like perfectly valid as like an appeal for a show, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Speaking of...
speaking of Kamen Rider, I figured now might be a good time to sneak this in as well.
Oh boy.
So this is Kamen Rider Revice.
Yes, the current actual, Kamen Rider.
Yeah, I believe the final
show.
episode aired today.
Yes, so this is basically our like time to do the wrap up on this show.
This was a bad one, right?
This was a bad one.
I didn't like it.
Yeah. So where are we at this point? We're sort of in like a denouement after the finale.
Yes.
This show's pacing is all over the place, right? Because like for the last 20 episodes, every like 2 or 3 episodes, we've been a point of like, oh, this is it, right? This is the end, and then it just keeps going. Yeah. But like a couple of episodes ago, they finally defeated the big bad, Lord Gif, Lord of the Demons, who is an incredibly boring guy who looks like a huge vagina with teeth. They kicked him, and then the show, as predicted, just kept going. So in the meantime, all sorts of stuff has happened. Like the like science guy had a very random villainous turn. Right. Where he like became a Kamen Rider himself and kicked everyone's ass, and then it was like, oh no, science guy, you're just doing this because you're sad about your dad, whom you hate and had never met before the start of this show, died in a pointless sacrifice.
And he says, wow, you're right, I'll be good again.
And then he stops being bad, and in the next episode they're buddies again. Right. And now the final arc they're doing, which does seem to be the final arc because this week's episode is the last episode.
Only one episode left. Man.
Yeah, is about how the main character has been losing his memories. So every time he transforms into Kamen Rider by sort of merging with his demon, who is this very annoying guy, sidekick doing the Japanese equivalent of a black cent. And like the idea is that like he loses more memories of the people he loves every time he transforms, which is sort of, it doesn't come out of nowhere because they like point at it often, but there is no like discernible reason given for why it happens only to him and not to any of the other Kamen Riders. And also it is displayed by him fading from pictures.
Of course,
it's just classic. A sort of like poorly constructed plot device to add tension, and and it's like they knew they needed more tension, so they brought this in. Except it never was used to add tension, until
it was just sort of there.
Until these like last 2 episodes, there's like, oh, we probably need to do something about this.
And they try to tie it.
It's gonna be like Lycroris Recoil. We'll talk about that later.
They sort of try to tie it into the show's whole theme of like family and familial bonds are important, and this ends in a twist that I actually don't find bad on principle. So the idea is that the demon buddy is like, okay, so it's my fault that he's losing all of his precious memories. So he's like, I'm gonna pretend to have turned evil, like to have turned, I was an evil demon all along, and I'm attacking and killing people. So main character has to kill me, and that will like make his memories come back somehow. And that is not a bad twist in say to have like your final battle be like a tragic fight between your 2 main characters. But as with everything in this show, it is so poorly set up. And at this point, after like 50 episodes, you just don't care about these characters enough to regard this battle with the kind of intensity that they clearly wanted to look at. So, Kamen Rider Revice, always a show that didn't really know what it wanted. They just kept writing it as they went along.
It didn't sound like they had a master plan on that.
No, and as a result, you have like a lot of stuff happening, but also nothing happening always at the same time. It's just, it is very clear that at this point, the Kamen Rider franchise has become, it used to be Monster of the Week. You had your Kamen Rider, every week there was a monster, he fought the monster. But it has become very obvious in recent years that they don't have the money to make a monster costume anymore. So they would rather make more Kamen Rider costumes because they can sell toys based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the entire premise of the show becomes Kamen Riders fighting other Kamen Riders. And then they have to awkwardly contrive and contort the plot in such directions to justify different Kamen Riders fighting each other.
Right.
Even though they are somewhat all supposed to be good guys.
Mm-hmm. And this is not an inherently bad thing when the show is constructed around it.
Right. Such as the upcoming Kamen Rider show, Kamen Rider Geats, has a premise that is specifically made so that it allows for Kamen Riders fighting each other. It's like a battle royale kind of situation. But in Revice, it just doesn't work. And it just results in the same people fighting each other over and over again, to the point where you have episodes where two characters just literally arrange to meet up in a backlot somewhere so they can fight, and then the fight goes undecided for some reason or another, and so in the next episode they have to meet up again.
Right. It's to keep increasingly thin reasons for everyone to be in conflict, and to the point where after the main conflict is resolved, we have another fucking 6 episodes of increasingly thin reasons for there to be more conflict.
Yes. So it is clear that they had no master plan. They just wrote stuff. There was a character who died, but then he was popular, so they brought him back, but then they didn't know what to do with him anymore because they killed him off because they didn't need him anymore. So, that kind of stuff. All of that, all of those telltale signs of a show that is just being written on the fly are on full display here.
That doesn't sound encouraging, because
no, it's not. It's don't watch Don't watch Kamen Rider Revice.
How are they gonna change that? If they're truly being governed by external factors and not trying to write a good story, then it sounds like that could just continue, but.
I would say that every once in a while a writer comes around who makes the new status quo work. They always have to make certain changes because of the declining popularity of the show and lower budgets. And then you have this kind of limbo period until eventually someone comes around and realizes the hand he's been dealt and manages to make something out of that. Yeah. So in a way, it always fixes itself. But it is about due time for it to fix itself, because Kamen Rider has been abysmal for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I do have to give one quick shout out to one of the spin-offs we watched. Another thing with Kamen Rider is the worse a Kamen Rider show is, the more spin-offs they'll give in. So Revice has a bunch of stupid spin-offs, but one of them is one where they have all of the girl characters from the previous 10 Kamen Rider shows teaming up. And that's actually quite fun because it's directed by Koichi Sakamoto, who is the good action choreographer they have.
Okay.
Who's also a huge pervert, so whenever anything happens with the girl characters, he's usually the director they bring in, so he can make them all wear shorts or leather pants and make them do high kicks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with Sakamoto is he's a very good action choreographer, so he's so good that he actually at some point seems to realize that he would rather shoot straight action rather than toku. So usually when Sakamoto is in charge, most of the fights will be just the human actors doing your Jackie Chan choreographies rather than the costumes and the CGI and the explosions. So,
right. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it's fun to see some old characters again in that spin-off.
That just made me think of the mom one they did a couple years
ago.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. But all right. Well,
not done yet.
We'll see how the
not
battle
done yet.
Oh,
what else?
Okay.
What else airs in superhero time block, guys?
What airs else? It is Precure. Precure.
What is the I didn't catch the full title.
The full title of this season of Precure is Delicious Party Precure. Delicious Party Precure. And so Zig and I have gotten really into Precure lately because we were like, hey, we like Super Sentai and we like, classic magical girl stuff. And you barely get that anymore because all the magical girl anime nowadays is either like the mecha adjacent stuff like Symphogear or like dark and edgy deconstructions. And then you have Precure,
bringing back old shows like Tokyo Mew Mew this season.
Yes, yes. So Precure is basically just Super Sentai as an anime. Like, it has the same sort of like dynamic where all of the characters share half a brain cell. And this season is Delicious Party Precure, and it is basically set in a world like what if Yu-Gi-Oh but food. So,
like with cards or just food?
No, food. Like food is the most important thing in the universe, right? It is the only thing people talk about. Food is the only is like the thing the entire economy of this city runs on.
Yakitada, Japan.
Yes. And so the bad guys are like evil phantom thieves kind of thing, and their whole thing is like, we're gonna steal the taste of all the good food. So in every episode they will try to like catch a recipe, which is like a fairy that represents a certain kind of food.
We're into some real kid show.
Yes, and if they catch that recipe, then that particular kind of food will lose all of its flavor. And this is of course an unspeakable evil that needs to be stopped. And that's where the Precures come in. And it's basically I don't know if we ever talked about the last Precure show on the podcast, but this one is basically the same idea. You have your characters who are lovable goofs. They end up in some sort of slice of life situation, like, oh no, we have been invited to a fancy restaurant and we need to learn etiquette and things like that. And then a villain shows up, he steals the flavor of the food, and then the Precures beat him up. So the most recent sort of story arc we've had is the one that introduced the extra Precure, because like in Power Rangers, where there's always a sixth ranger, you have an extra Precure, in this case a fourth Precure. And she is like... Sorry?
Precure. Bring in the green Precure.
Right. Yeah. And we've had that arc. So that's always fun because it introduces a new member to the crew that sort of like spices up the dynamic a little bit, right? But another fun thing about this year's season is that there is actually a sort of like tuxedo mask kind of guy, as in like a magical boy, but not really, like legally distinct from a Precure, but male.
He shows up and does nothing and leaves.
Yes, who just shows up and like shoots one beam at the monster and then is like, my job here is done, but you didn't do anything.
Yes, exactly.
And the guy is literally going through an arc where he's like, am I just getting in the way? Which is pretty funny indeed. Yeah. But yes, it's a fun, like cute, inoffensive little show. As usual with these kinds of shows, like mascots are the best characters because they're like stupid tiny anime animals that think they are hot shit but are really just useless. Right. It's like any possible cliche you can imagine is there, but it is executed in a fun and lovely way. So
do you still get like the like random, ridiculously well animated?
Yes, absolutely. Scene? Yes. Yeah. The fight scenes can still be. I mean, because the thing with Precure is like, normally you would associate magical girls with like, we shoot beams or glitter at monsters, but Precure has always been we just kick and punch the monsters.
Right, we actually fist fight the monsters.
Yes. Yeah. So that usually leads to some pretty fun situations. There's still a lot of stock footage, of course. Like their finisher is like they have a blender that turns into a gun.
Okay.
Right,
yeah, I mean, I would expect to have canned footage of the finisher.
Right.
Yes.
The monsters are always like two kitchen utensils randomly combined into one horrible monstrosity. You know, it's that kind of like charming
I have to
stuff.
fight a killer spork.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah.
Like, and
Alright.
it will literally be like a spork with an evil face and arms and legs. Like,
Sure.
it's just that
Alright.
kind of show where if you want, you know, like a comfy blanket of like, I know exactly what this is going to be,
Right.
and you like this dynamic of like, we're fighting evil, but we are also all dumbasses, then this is definitely the kind of show that you would be interested in, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Gonna have to keep listening to my lovely voice here.
yeah, I guess we have one more thing we wanted to have you talk about, Aqua, because somehow you are still watching
Still new shows coming out, baby.
Yeah.
Love Live Superstar, this being the second season of Superstar, but
The second season
would-
of the fourth season? Yes.
yes, the second season 4-2 or something.
Yeah, or like season 3.5, because the thing with Love Live is kind of weird. Like, I think this is technically the
goodness.
third mainline love series.
Right, you had like the Battle Royale one.
Yeah, the
middle there somewhere,
Nishikizaki
right?
School Idol Club something is like a
Right.
Saya spin-off side story kind of thing.
But
Truly the engine that never
Yes.
dies.
So, why am I still watching this? Good question. No, the answer is I've starting to see Love Live as a sort of interesting an interesting case study in writing theory.
okay.
Because
Oh no, he's at that stage of being a fan.
I mean, if you've read my Love Live coverage, you know I've always been in this stage.
yes. I know this.
But the thing is, Love Live is it's the same show over and over and over again. You know, it is. They constantly reuse the same episodic plots. They constantly reuse the same character archetypes. They constantly reuse the same jokes. And as a result, this show is sort of like Frankenstein together out of things we've seen before in other Love Live shows. Like, for example, the main characters are basically all reincarnations of characters you've seen in previous Love Live
Okay, hold
shows.
on.
Not literally.
Okay,
but
okay,
like,
okay.
Wait,
not
does
literally.
that mean they died?
But just like, oh, you know,
How much
We hear
funnier
that
would that
Kevin
be, though?
Magnus.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how much funnier would it be like, oh, sorry, the entire cast of Love Live Superstar, I don't know, like
Season 1.
the prior
Right, just
season,
all-
becomes Icky Tozen, but Love Live. Like,
right, just died in a horrible like
Freak stage
plane
accident.
accident
Yeah.
or something.
the
yeah.
lights fell.
Yeah, the
There's-
pyrotechnics went off
Right.
too early, and they were all immolated immediately.
Their spirits were transferred to another
Oh my
another
God.
generation of yeah.
Right. No, unfortunately, it's not that. It's just more like, oh, you know, you have your very specific stereotypes like the girl who has a lot of talent, the one who really loves idols and wants to be an idol, the hyper competent one who's just sort of going along because she's good friends with the other ones, the like gremlin who is a sucker for fame. Like, all of these archetypes just come back in every single season. But the thing is, with every subsequent season, they pull these things off slightly better.
Okay.
And as a result, I just sort of want to see where they keep going and when it will eventually become an actually good show. So-
Are you sure this isn't like Stockholm syndrome? Like,
Probably. I mean, the thing with Love Live is always that it has the sort of thing that Lycroris Recoil has going on, that it is a bad show that is very well made. Like,
right.
it looks good. The character, like the moment-to-moment character interactions are pretty good. The jokes land. Like, this is Juki Hanada. He knows what he does. The thing is just that what he does, or what he is made to do in here, is not necessarily something that appeals to me. But the thing is, there's always stuff to like in these episodes, which is what keeps me coming back. And it's especially interesting just because I very critically evaluated the second season, Love Live Sunshine, for the blog. It's interesting to see this now and basically see them do that same plot, but it's better, or oh, they added a bit more nuance here, or oh, they toned down some of the excessive drama here, and that makes it an interesting watch for me personally, at least.
You're seeing progress.
Yeah. So, for example, like...
Does that mean Love Live is now the best it's ever been? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for what it's worth.
Interesting.
So, an example is like one of the recent episodes I watched is a classic Love Live episode where there is a girl who wants to join the idol group, but she's not confident. And she has a good friend who decides to join the idol group in her stead in order to convince the first girl, the shy girl, to join up as well, even though the friend doesn't really want to become an idol. That's a plot they've done in every single show, I think, and they've done it here again. But yet again, they have filed off some of the drama, some of the annoying, oh, being an idol is the best thing in the universe. They've added some more jokes, and as a result, I've come across with something that is a lot more likable than back when they did that plot in Love Live Sunshine, for example.
Right.
Then, there is one thing I do have to point out. I've just watched episode 5 of this new season. So the thing is, the first season of Love Live Superstar, one of the big reasons why I thought it was better than all of the other Love Live I've seen before is that it had only 5 main characters. Usually it's 9. It's the gacha game thing. There's a girl for everyone. But in this one, it was only 5, which as a result led, of course, to more character development, more fleshing out for all of these characters. And then for Season 2, they announced that they were going to add 4 more girls to bring it to the total of 9, which is like the holy number for Love Live, which they actually point out in the show. They're like, we have 9 we have 9 members now. 9 is the legendary number. All of the legendary idol groups had 9 members.
Right, because the previous groups are seen as like legends of the game, right? That they're trying to aspire to, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh no, they're going to make all the same mistakes again, but it's relatively manageable so far. So in episode 5, they introduced the last new member. And as is tradition with Love Live, as is everything, the final member they add is always a comic relief character. Okay. So, and her whole thing is she hustles.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
She has the Sigma grind set. She's basically, obsessed with money. She works a bunch of part-time gigs. She invests in the stock market, and she's
how much crypto has she bought?
No crypto references yet.
Okay.
There is one goofy bit in an early episode where she's in the background freaking out because the decay is in the red.
Right.
So. Yes, and it's especially funny that they constantly dunk on this girl for having the grind set, when this is also the show that did an entire episode about, oh no, actually waking up at 4 a.m. to go run 10 kilometers before school is good, actually. So double standard in anime, where have we seen it before? But the cool thing about this character is, and this is one of the positive evolutions, is Love Live has finally learned to give characters an edge, make characters unsympathetic, right? For example, they introduce a rival in this new season who is just straight up bitch. All of the other rivals in Love Live before have been Pokemon rivals. Have been, I'll be rooting for you. Yeah, we'll be rooting for you too. Let's all do our best and drive each other to the top. And this girl is just wow, you guys are what I'm going up against? Whoa, I'm gonna win this with my hands tied behind my back if you guys were the competition.
I mean, what are the odds they're gonna reverse that at some point?
I mean, of course they are.
Yeah,
they
she'll
definitely
join the
are.
group by the end.
No, she's not joining the
Demon
group.
King Piccolo, it took a while, but he became good.
Look, incremental progress.
At least for now, right? Yeah.
So the thing with this new girl, the hustle girl, is that she is basically trying to scam the group. She goes up to them and be like, hey, you guys need a PR representative, someone who can give you internet clout. You know what? I'll film you and I'll edit all your videos and I'll upload it to YouTube. And they're like, yeah, but we can't afford that. that, and she'll be like, no, I'll work for you for exposure, as long as I get all the royalty income from the videos, you don't have to pay me anything.
Right,
so the entire episode is just basically about her trying to scam them and being a greedy piece of shit, and she doesn't really get better by the end. So
Sure.
It's fun to see Love Live introducing the comical, unsympathetic, scumbag character.
Right. Okay.
She's also an influencer, so that makes her immediately hateable.
That's true. Yeah, that's hard.
Can't
It's
argue
hard
that.
to reverse that. Yeah,
But yeah, once again, weird that Love Live would dunk on influencers, seeing that idols
Yeah.
are kind of basically the same thing, but whatever.
post up your YouTube videos with reaction faces in the thumbnails, which for some reason is one very specific thing that drives me crazy.
I mean, that is literally they show her YouTube feed, and all of her video thumbnails are wacky
I
face.
fucking hate
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yes.
Actually.
That's for some reason that one particular thing drives me wild.
You see it everywhere. Yep, and
All right.
that wraps up 1 hour of me talking about bad shows I'm watching.
about just kid, yeah.
Why?
But
Oh wait, there was a very good gag in the
goodness.
last episode that I do need to talk to you about.
Okay.
So the joke is, you see two of the girls are talking to each other outside of an apartment, and all of a sudden a basket drops down on a rope. And you see them both raising their hands, and they're holding cards, and they put 2 cards into the basket, and it goes up again. And then they continue their conversation.
Yes.
And then a minute later, one of the other girls comes out on the balcony of the building and is like, "Oh, sorry, my room is too small to have all of you in there, but you guys are okay playing cards with us, right?" So the whole thing is that they're playing cards, but 2 of them can't be there. So they have to
so
lower
they're-
down a basket so they can put their cards in
alright.
that. And then the
guess.
end of the joke is that the other girls who are in the room discover a Nintendo Switch there, and they just start playing Fortune Street and ignore the other 2.
Of course they
Which
play
is-
Fortune Street. They gotta hustle.
Yeah, they gotta hustle.
Yeah.
They gotta go into the in-game stock market so Slime from Dragon Quest can get his dividends.
all right.
Anyway,
Well, thank you, Aqua, for catching us up on all those children's shows.
gee, I'm sure
I
I'm
don't-
happy.
I don't know
you
if I
do
would
not
put.
edit this podcast at all.
I'm sure. I'm not sure I would put Love Live in a kid show category, but
Speaking of shows, with, speaking of shows with kids,
yeah.
Yes,
So
let's talk about some shows with children.
Yeah, we'll get into our regularly scheduled anime talk here, and let's talk about Made in Abyss, the Golden City of the Scorching Sun, and I'll
Let
just
us talk indeed.
I'll just mention,
Content
I tapped
warning.
out of this show before even watching the movies. Apparently,
fair.
Artemis tapped out after one of these recent episodes.
also understandable.
For understandable reasons, if you know her situation.
And,
You know, this is the show. Don't even need that much. I think anyone is justified.
apparently, some things went down in these past.
Yeah, so I think for the sake of this podcast, I think we need to put a big spoiler warning
Okay.
that we're not going to be able to talk about these episodes of Made in Abyss without actually getting into the
Yes.
nitty gritty. So
Yeah,
I don't know, Jell, put a marker down here.
Spoiler
like,
slash content
spoiler
warning.
yeah.
I don't
Everybody,
know.
spoiler warning. I'll
buyer beware.
I'll timestamp
in, 5
before
seconds.
the spoiler warning here.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so
Yeah.
Baby stew,
as a
huh?
no, okay. Look, first as a quick recap, since we also have Jell here who has not been watching Made in Abyss. Just a quick recap, right? Is that Rico, Reg, and Nanachi have arrived in the town of Hollows, right, which is a settlement that has somehow managed to survive in the 6th layer of the
Yep.
Abyss. We are aware that there is something about their, it is a classic village with a dark
Yep.
secret. The village is magical in its nature, in the way it can enforce its concept of barter and
Yes.
value. And we are introduced to Faputa, a character who is sort of referenced as the Princess of the Hollows,
Yep.
who, for reasons unstated until now, has a sort of a seething feud with the village.
But it's also like worshipped as a goddess, as the embodiment of value. Like
the very embodiment of
any part of her is the most valuable thing in the town. It can be traded for basically anything.
Yes. And so with these latest 2 episodes, 7 and 8, we have a character named Vueko who was one of the original Delvers of the Abyss that was seen in the flashback.
Riko went exploring and found Vueko locked up in a pit for God knows how long.
Yes.
And pulled her out.
And it is here in these 2 episodes where she gives us the explanation of the origins of the village. And, not to necessarily sum it all up, but basically, they came to the 6th layer. They immediately realized it was super fucked down here. Tried to go back up. That definitely doesn't work. So they're left with no recourse but to sort of eke out a living here on the 6th layer. And for many reasons, this... more than just, big monsters, the fundamental physics of the 6th layer are, actively hostile to human life. In every way possible. And the way this is most emblematic of is even the water they drink is actively killing them and mutating the members of the Ganja tribe, basically, melting their limbs and rehardening them into these sort of fungaloid growths.
One thing that is, I think, important that we do need to point out before we go further is that the Ganja tribe, this party of explorers from a long time ago, they were all outcasts. They were misfits, people who did not belong. Vueko, for example, was cast out and sent on this suicide mission basically because she is barren. She can't get children. And along the way, they pick up a little girl who's a member of a tribe that lives in one of the higher layers of the abyss, named Irumui, who has been cast out for the same reason, and also because she can't have children. So she tags along, and she sort of joins them in trying to make a life for themselves on the 6th layer.
And it is important to understand within the context of the story, right? Is that while for Vueko, being barren is one aspect of who she is, but it is not necessarily the
she's been through a
primary
lot of other stuff,
identifier of who she is. However, in contrast, Irumui
is a small child, right?
Not only is she a small child, but she clearly glorifies motherhood. And thus, her inability to be a mother impacts her greatly mentally and emotionally.
What I meant to get, I was because she is young, and this is the reason why she was cast out, it is her, defining, thing that she thinks about constantly.
In her conception, this is her original
exactly,
sin.
Yeah.
Anyways, this all sort of culminates in the members of the tribe discovering a relic. As we know, many Abyss dwellers descend into the Abyss to find relics, which are mysterious artifacts with often supernatural effects and capabilities.
And in this layer, they basically grow on trees.
Yes. And we find one that is known as the Cradle of Wishes, which is a sort of orange glass egg that is capable of granting wishes to the one who holds it. However, we are informed by the reg-like automatons on this layer that this artifact tends to not work well with adults, because adults are known as motley and complicated individuals, right? Adults have motley wishes. They're often stained by their years of existence and experience and their knowledge. And thus, we are informed that the cradle works best with children who have simple, primal desires. And so, as this disease ravishes the Ganja tribe, right, their numbers are dropping, this disease is killing them, in a sort of last-ditch effort for survival, they give the egg to Irimui in hopes that she, as a child, will wish for
everything will be okay.
Literally something, anything to save them. So, Irimui takes the egg, and she is cured of the disease. Or seemingly, she is no longer susceptible to its effects. But also, her body begins to mutate. The best way I would describe it is she starts to sprout like a fungus or a tree. And it is here that we find out the contents of Irimui's wish. And if our description of her character wasn't enough foreshadowing, her wish is essentially to be a mother, to be capable of bearing children. And we are introduced to the first of Irimui's stillborn children. A sort of rabbit-like
She got
creature.
attached to the weird hermit crab bunny things on that layer, and so her children look like that. These fuzzy little
Except
creatures.
they are sort of stillborn, incomplete beings, right? The implication is that they are organic creatures, but they do not have fully formed mouths.
Meat-shaped like creatures.
Eyes. Yes. Still alive, still moving, but not for long.
Okay.
It is around here where and to be clear, this emotionally destroys Irimui. That this is very much a dark twist to her wish, right? The wish-granting egg gave her the ability to give birth, but the wish-granting egg did not include the ability for those things she births to survive.
I'm assuming this is all depicted in very graphic detail.
It's very wet. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not particularly
slimy.
pleasant. And so this anguish, it destroys her. It this is one of those things where, the anime, what it lacks in the manga's details can make up in sound effects, because Irimui's voice actress is very good at sounding like a 9-year-old child going through the most gruesome anguish imaginable. It sounds exactly what that sounds like. Anyways, episode 7 ends with Vueko finally succumbing to the disease, losing consciousness, and later awakening, her symptoms cured, and sort of woken up and escorted by Wazukian. Wazukian,
the leader of the expedition,
is the leader of the expedition. He is sort of think half Nigel Thornberry, half cult leader.
Oh my goodness!
I guess.
Sure. What if Nigel Thornberry was a cult leader? Sure.
Yes, like a man who is filled with a youthful
exuberance,
lust for life and exuberance. It just comes out of him, right? He loves the novel. He is instilled with a great sense of wanderlust.
Right.
To him, exploring the abyss is the most natural thing to do in the world.
It's exciting.
Wazukian also has maybe the most insidious messiah complex of any character in Made in Abyss.
Right.
Keep that in mind. So, episode 7 sort of ends with Wazukian cheerfully informing Vueko that, good news! We've cured the disease, and also secured a consistent source of food for the village.
I can see where this is going, and I don't like it.
And yes, this is sort of where it is revealed in episode 8, that how the village survived, how the village was formed in the 6th layer of the Abyss, is on the back of the wholesale slaughter and consumption of Irimui's children. at this point in episode 8, she has morphed into this very upsetting
blob thing. Like,
the best way I would describe her at this point is, you know those hills in Mario that have eyes on them? You know,
yeah.
like the really dome-shaped hills?
Yeah.
With the eyes? Think about like that, but made of like human flesh, and just sort of like gaping and gasping and making what sort of sounds like human vocalizations constantly as it constantly births
increasingly larger, like, things, right?
Dead things.
Yes.
Creatures.
The Irumyuui that Vueko once knew and loved is, well, has become something very different by episode 8. And it is clear at this point, if it was not clear before, that her wish has been truly corrupted and twisted to something abominable. It is an affront to nature itself, right?
Right.
And yet, this is how the village survives. There was no other cure to the disease but consuming Irumyui's children. There was no way for this tribe to survive without her. And yet, the lengths to which this village goes to achieve that is... I mean, as we were alluding to, for many people, it is profane. It is far too much for many people. Vueko herself.
Yep.
And it is here that we then find out that Wazukyan, while Vueko was unconscious, gave Irumyuui a second wish-granting egg. And it becomes immediately ambiguous whose wish was actually implanted into Irumyuui that second time around.
Oh, God.
Because up until now, the assumption was, well, Irumyuui is a horrifying birthing monster, but, well, if that's what she wished for, then I guess we should respect her wishes.
Right.
But the second egg suddenly has you wondering, whose wish was that?
Right.
And
What the... Yeah.
Is what was done to Irumyuui consensual?
Right. I mean, the implications of that are way worse.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And she kind of morphs further, right?
Yes, into a great tree. The tree that is the village. We find out that is the now sort of catatonic body of Irumyuui herself, or whatever
like
was left of her.
The entire
by the
village is inside of her shell, basically.
Yes. And its inhabitants then subsumed by her in what I suppose could be described as the first balancing of village Irumyuui. We find out that the reason why everybody looks like a weirdo hollow in the village is that, again, the villagers venerate Irumyuui. She is their savior, and so they offer their corporeal bodies to her, and that is how everybody becomes the messed up hollows that they are by the time Riko sees them.
Right.
In the current anime story of the anime.
Right. This all happened in the past, right? This was...
Yes.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's once again, Made in Abyss, I think, as upsetting as all of this is, it once again does an almost immaculate job of expressing what I think is one of Made in Abyss's core themes, which is that I believe Made in Abyss believes is that unconditional love can transcend time, space, and form. That love in the world of Made in Abyss, as we saw in the ways that Midi saved Manachi, in the ways that
like Riko was even born and exists,
was her mother's love for her.
Or in a darker way, in the way that which Boundroot was able to turn Prushka into a get out of the abyss free card, basically.
Yes. Is that love is maybe the one thing that can transcend the abyss, but time and time again, Made in Abyss shows that bad people also understand this.
Right.
Like, most of the villains in Made in Abyss, even if they present themselves as sociopaths, actually have a distressingly good understanding of this dynamic.
Right, and take advantage
and
of
continuously
it.
use it and exploit it
Right.
for their own means. And it has happened once again here in the 6th layer, in maybe its most upsetting version yet. This is the thing Iro and I have been wringing our hands about for all season, is the reveal of the truth of the village. And it can't be overstated just how truly upsetting.
Yeah, like it's disturbing listening to like the kind of cold hard fact explanation of it. I can only imagine when you add the actual like audio visual experience of watching it, it's a lot worse. But that's
and
I guess it's always a question of like, is it worth it?
right.
So here's the thing. In a lot of ways, I mean, it is almost using a flashback as a cudgel.
Right.
But the episode sort of then concludes with the idea that Faputa is now on a warpath. Yes, we should actually reveal the one last thing. Is that Tree Irimui births one last child. And this one child is imbued with all of Irimui's latent resentment for the village. The constant grief of losing her children being consumed by these craven cowards who have the gall to worship her on a pedestal. All of these feelings are imbued into one final child, and that child is revealed to be Faputa, the Hollow Princess,
who has been trying and to find a way to destroy the village for God knows how long.
Yes, and it is sort of hinted at the end of these episodes that now that she has reconnected with Reg and his like super incinerator cannon, that she now has the means to destroy the village once and for all. And using a flashback to explain a character's motivations is a very like
well-worn
classic,
device.
well-worn device in manga or in fiction in general.
Right.
And I don't know if I can say it's worth it, but you come out of that flashback like immediately saying that like whatever Faputa is about to do to this village is completely justified.
Right.
Because you get like three or so
Right.
episodes ago, like you had Vuko being like, "Oh yeah, I threw him in that pit because I opposed the creation of the village." But well, maybe it's not so bad now. I guess that all these people showed up who aren't involved, and then you get the whole flashback, and I don't know. At least I could not help but think like, "Oh, this village is built on sin and should be destroyed."
Right.
Regardless of its current state.
Yeah.
It's just the thing that Made in Abyss has always been so good at is intertwining some truly upsetting imagery with some of the most evocative and interesting world building
Yeah.
that I think anime can bring.
Yeah. It's definitely feels like a complex discussion on whether or not that's my question of is it worth it? I feel like it's not a yes or no answer, right? Like there are.
I think it truly is like it will depend on you, like your own tolerances and acceptance of the type of story that Made in Abyss is.
Yeah.
And I would never blame anybody for like at any point, even as far back as Rico and the arms stuff in season 1. I would never blame anybody at any point in the story just saying,
yeah, that was like your warning sign. Tap out now.
I'm good.
This is where we're headed, right? But yeah. Yeah, no, so that was the big one you guys were waiting for, but
yeah.
I guess just in some ways, the whole idea of this child turned into a birthing machine and we ate the babies to survive is so
it's pretty messed up.
Indescribably perverse. It almost becomes meaningless.
Like your
yes,
brain just goes numb to it at some point because it's so
right. Like it's
as a defense mechanism, your brain kind of shuts off.
Is that like you say the words "baby soup" and it's almost comical? Like it's an aristocrat's joke, right?
Right.
Like it's You know, friggin' Wazukyan giving a speech about how the meat is most effective at
When
curing the
fresh.
disease when it's
Yeah.
fresh.
Oh, God.
As he's chopping up this baby, it's like, no, you're not wrong, Aqua. I think I do agree. I guess for me, I think they leverage the emotional stakes enough to still
Right.
make it hit.
I didn't
Like-
necessarily say that as a judgment on its quality. I more like said it as a this did not traumatize me. as a-
Right.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And that is going to depend on the per person, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, me, I don't like.
it is just like
I
I'm the kind
don't-
of person who like watches something like this, and my main emotional response is, "Oh, well, that's a very clever way to disturb the viewer while simultaneously tying into the themes of the show." Yes,
Nothing wrong with that.
That is like
I
my
think
reaction
that's
to
fine,
this,
I think.
and that's mostly my reaction to most things, so I'm used to it. But it is different than, like, for example, the first time Made in Abyss did this with the arm was more genuinely disturbing than this was. This was something that
there's
was
definitely an argument.
academically interesting to me, and that only makes me
yes.
more excited to watch whatever happens next.
Maybe the arm thing too is a little more attached to reality, where this is so
Right.
fantastical, right?
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah,
No, I think that is a totally fair assessment.
Yeah.
And honestly, like in some regards, you know, I think Tsukushi probably expects some of his audience to react that way because I mean, Riko is the one being told this story, and she kind of just brushes.
I mean,
I'm just like,
Riko
wow,
is-
cool story.
I'm
Yeah,
not
like,
sure
that's her
how to
response
feel
to the
about
story.
Riko at this point. Because she is just so completely impervious to any of the horrible shit that happens to her that it sort of becomes
think-
comical in its own way. Like,
I mean, I feel like there's a bit of an implication, right? That like, I mean, this was exemplified with Wazukyan in
For the
in
kind
flashback.
of
Is
person
that
who wants to?
yeah,
people who desire to explore the abyss
Yeah.
are inherently like crazy broken people, right? Like, you know, of all of all the characters in the show most like Wazukyan, it's probably Riko,
Yeah.
right? Would Riko have made the same choice? I'm not sure, but she has the same
Yeah.
mindset.
right.
yeah.
So I think that to a certain extent, I think Tsukushi knowingly sort of crafts his story in a way where there will be people like me who are like, this is horrible. I gotta keep reading. And then there are people like you, Akko, who are like, this is horrible. Tell me more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I think the thing I'll say that I think is interesting is I was curious if like this would be sort of a breaking point with the fan base as a whole, but it kind of sounds like a lot of people came away from this episode going, man, Made in Abyss's storytelling is great.
Yeah, I got the feeling this did barely register, as opposed to, like, people are still memeing about Bondrewd and stuff like that, but this is like... This didn't really seem to make that big of an impact. Oddly
Yeah,
enough.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe people were more ready
Yeah,
for
maybe.
it than I
Yeah,
gave them
probably,
credit
yeah.
for. But
Yeah, I guess
guess-
at this point, you know, is there anything that they could do that would be
I'm
like
also curious of.
shocking at this point based on what we've seen before?
I mean, the thing is, like...
can you escalate? Can you even escalate beyond baby
I
stew?
agree.
I don't know,
I
but-
agree with what Zig always says, and that I expect Made in Abyss going forward to become more abstract and more personal. And in a way, this arc has kind of been that. Like it's been less. Oh, look at these horrible monsters that live here, and more of like almost like weirdly socio-political in a way. And this little flashback was actually like a callback to the old Made in Abyss, where you have, you know, the explicit horror, whereas up until now most of the stuff with the Village of the Hollows has been like also perverse and messed up, but like in a different way, in a sort of
right.
like this is no longer, oh, look at that messed up thing, it's more like, oh my god, everything is corrupted and twisted. And I imagine that as they go further and further down, it's just going to be more and more of that. To the point where I just imagine that in like season 4, we're just watching shapeless colors blending in on one another, and the characters don't even look like the characters anymore. Like,
you think we're gonna get a season 4?
Yeah, no, I mean,
of this?
Hypothetically, right?
Yeah. So
we might not see, based on Sakushi's pacing of the manga, we might not see season 3 until optimistically 2027.
Right.
So
I'm just saying hypothetically, right? Like,
yes, I know. I'm
I was gonna bring up, like, on a lot of like the Netflix shows, for example, we've brought up the idea that watching things all at once or more quickly sort of
yes, thank you for bringing this up.
The idea of like evens out its peaks and valleys almost, like, and sort of can
it sort of homogenizes
a little
the watching
bit.
experience.
And so I wonder, like, you and I were reading the manga, and that whole flashback probably took place over something like 4 to 9 months.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, we literally saw, like, mutated birthing machine Iramui, and then just had to sort of sit with that imagery for like 3 months.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I wonder if, like, people watching the anime are like, oh man, that was a lot.
But it doesn't linger,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like
They only have to think about it for 1 week, right?
yes, I definitely think that, like, the pacing of the story does have a very large impact on that. I think that, I mean, hell, even Made in Abyss itself, I am glad it is still a weekly anime, right? Because I do think in a lot of ways 7 and 8 there does need to be a week between those episodes so that you can sort of, like, sit and have the revelation linger in you, you know, like let it like sort of gestate in
because
your brain before.
It's also timed perfectly, right? It ends right before Wazukan basically admits, yes, I made the babies into
and I mean, that's how the manga chapters are also divided. It's like when you have so much more time between, I wonder if that affects.
I do wonder. I think that does have an effect, and I guess this is why. And again, I don't think there's necessarily an objective, like, well, this is the best way to tell a story or pace it out. But I do think that, like, I think this is definitely one of those good reminders in general that, yes, the pacing of a story can have a tremendous impact on how it is received by its
just how a story is presented to its audience, right?
Yes. Right. So I think that's a very good point.
All right.
Yeah.
We need to move on.
Like some horny vampire girls.
Yeah, let's have a palate cleanser here and talk about Call of the Night.
Speaking of calling it, I called it. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
Anytime you got vampires in a work, it's a rule. More vampires are gonna show up.
Yeah. So they do. Now that we've hit the halfway point, they decided to throw some gasoline on the fire here, and we are introduced to the Council of Hot Lady Vampires that are governing vampire activity in the city.
Oh, I love Castlevania Season 3.
Yeah, they've been watching. So the main kid. I don't think I've ever actually mentioned their names, but now I need to be specific. So
Coconuts.
Main kid, his name is Ko, and the main vampire girl is Nazuna, right? And they've been observing whatever they're doing, because Nazuna needs to follow the guidelines of the vampire rules, right? And once they decide, it does not appear she's making any effort to actually turn him into a vampire, they're like, well, he knows too much, we have to kill him. So they attempt to kill the main kid, which just leads to some vampire fighting, and they take him away and ask him some questions, and he has to explain to the Council of Hot Vampire Ladies that he is in fact trying to turn into a vampire, and they clear up the misunderstanding. But the interesting things to come out of this, for one, they kind of flip the script with Nazuna, who up to this point has been sort of like the cool older lady, like she's the mature, drinking beer and making dirty jokes, she's the one with all the she's the confident one in charge of all the situations, and
it turns out that in Vampire Society she ain't shit. Like,
yes, yeah, and in Vampire Society,
classic.
She is very similar. She's kind of similar to Ko in that she has been shirking her vampire responsibilities to do whatever the hell she wants, and they're like, "No, your job is to turn more people into vampires, and you have to do that."
Man, is this the ultimate red pill? No matter how high up in the hierarchy you go, no matter who you become, human, vampire, you're all just a wage slave in the end.
Well, they do let them off when they determine it's close enough, in that this kid is determined to be turned into a vampire, and while Nazuna is not actively helping him do so, she's like, whatever, kid, I'll just keep drinking your blood. So they're like, all right, fine, that's good enough. But the other rule that they have to, the completely arbitrary rule that they have to throw in here to escalate things, is that he must be turned within 1 year, or they will kill him if he is not turned within that time period. Because he's like, oh,
I don't know, man.
He's like, I've got years to figure this out. And they're like, you have 1 year, and starting from when she started drinking your blood, so who knows how long they've already been hanging out.
Yeah, and, I mean, that just feels like weirdly arbitrary stakes to introduce into your not even rom-com, your whatever this show is.
It's a rom-com at the end of the day. But they so, you know, they throw that in there to ratchet up the tension a bit. And so Ko's like, well, I guess I better figure this out. And
I mean, what Ko should do is cite the Baccano argument that it's not a good idea to turn me into a vampire when I'm only biologically 15, because then how am I going to get cigarettes and booze for the rest of eternity?
Yeah, they should wait until he's old enough to get cigarettes and booze. But yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of rolling through this like I'm being dismissive, but I think it actually works pretty good.
Sure, I mean, it sounds like it's shaking up the formula, which, I mean, you were kind of speaking to of like the show is kind of settling into a very specific pace.
I think it was as even though it's a bit arbitrary, I think it was kind of a needed shake-up that's pretty effective.
I mean, it helps to set a clear boundary when your show risks getting too complacent, right?
Yeah.
When you start getting the feeling of like this is going nowhere, and then all of a sudden, okay, you have a year or else you die. Like,
yeah. So he immediately tries to speed things up. This was actually a pretty good sequence that I think is a good indicator of like the show's level of they definitely know what they're doing with the relationship stuff. Like, it's very intentional. But he decides, all right, well, I guess let's go on a date. Let's get this going, right? And so he gets some pointers from one of the other vampires on what to do with a girl on a date, which is like the most stereotypical, let's go to the movies, and then we'll go get coffee and talk about the movie, and then we'll go...
So does he need to fall in love with her, or does she need to fall in love with him?
The rule is he has to fall in love with her, and then if he is at any point when he is in love with her and she drinks his blood, he will theoretically turn into a vampire. Okay. That's how it's supposed to work. So far that has not happened, and while he certainly has a certain fascination with her, I guess he does not technically love her yet. So so he's like, let's go on a date, and he's like, do you know me? Like, I hate all of this stuff. Like, I don't want to do any of this.
But she's like, all right, PS1.
Yes, I want to play Street Fighter Alpha on my PS1. But she's like, all right, fine, I'll play along, and she kind of begrudgingly goes along, and it's just going absolutely terrible, and she just like finally bails. And he's like, I don't understand any of this. How does this even work? And so she eventually comes back, and she's like, well, it's basically like, let's do what we always do. And she even brings up the question of like, what do you think a date is? Like, we're basically been dating this whole time. And I'm like, okay, yep, they know what they're doing, right? And
wait until this guy figures out what being in a relationship actually is.
Yeah, but I find it funny because a lot of times with anime romantic comedies, we make that statement of, well, they're practically dating already anyway, right? See the entire cast of Nozaki-kun, right?
I mean, it is kind of weird to have at the premise like he needs to fall in love with her, because it's like, is that quantifiable? Like,
well, I think that's also one of the things they're going for, is like, how do you even quantify what that means, right? But yeah, so we had that, and then the other notable thing is they introduce another guy from school that I think what they're going to do, where they're going with this, is I think he's going to be the foil character that actually does fall in love with a vampire and get turned into a vampire.
Like, immediately,
Yeah, like, none of that has happened yet, but I feel like that's probably where they're going, because they, like, imply that there's some girl that has caught his attention, but she can only hang out at night. I'm like, okay, well, that's a vampire.
Right.
And because he is a bit more, I don't want to, I'm not going to say normal, but
he's not as
conventional,
wishy-washy and navel-gazy as the main character, maybe.
Well, the main guy, I wouldn't describe him as that either. He doesn't understand what love is. He's actually, I think I talked about last time, he's actually not wishy-washy at all. Like, he's very, like as soon as he makes up his mind, he's like, I'm taking action immediately.
Right.
And that's why
he's just like,
that's why he gets into bad situations.
Right. Yeah, that's how he ended up, quitting school and hanging out with a vampire lady all night. But is that a bad decision? I don't know. But yeah, so he's a more conventionally
horny enemy
well-adjusted member of society. He's actually not like the goofy friend. He's actually like popular and everybody likes him.
Right. He's like, okay, yeah, sure. Okay, he's that kind of guy. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I think he's going to be like the template for him to look at as like the foil character here of, oh, this is how it could go, and we'll see if I'm actually right on that. But yeah, overall, I actually like these two episodes. I think they appropriately turned up the tension. And I do think the relationship between the main two characters, which is the most important part of the show, has been pretty good. And I think I'm still holding off and saying this is a good show and you should watch it because of a lot of the other external factors I've talked about, in other episodes. But I think the core of it is good, which is the important part. I've come around where I'm actually I am actually enjoying it. Like, I want to be clear, like, I am actually enjoying watching the show.
So to me, the show just seems like the author took a good look at his first work, Dagashi Kashi, and he's like, okay, what do people like about this, and what should I change?
Yeah,
and made something out of that is more engaging, I guess. What would you say about this? Is this better or worse than Dagashi Kashi?
It's different. Dagashi Kashi. So I think the key difference, like, I would draw the parallel with in Dagashi Kashi with the main kid and the weird candy girl.
Yes,
they do have kind of a similar relationship where she's sort of the magical girlfriend, right? But beyond that, I wouldn't. Beyond that, I don't think it's really that similar because, in Call of the Night, they actually have a relationship. Whereas in Dagashi Kashi, like, they didn't really have a meaningful relationship in that show.
She just did wacky things and he was there.
Right, and he was fascinated by this pretty girl that was doing these weird things and was obsessed with candy. Whereas in Call of the Night, they actually do have a relationship where they, talk to each other and discuss their feelings and things. So I think that's the big difference. And so I could see that as an evolution of that story. But even like the mood and everything, you can see similarities, but I would still say they're pretty different.
Right. But like the core of like magical girlfriend, manic pixie dream girl sort of thing, that was sort of like that seems similar.
Yeah, that part is similar, and I think they're probably handling that better. Yeah. I think in Dagashi Kashi, like, it wasn't as important in Dagashi Kashi because you had like other characters and other things going on. Whereas Call of the Night, like, this is the focus of the show, like every episode, and they're doing a better job with it, which is good. So, all right.
Speaking of Manic Pixie Dream Girls,
let's talk about the hot mess that is Lycroris Recoil.
Sure.
Which continues to do whatever the hell it wants, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had was it episode 8 was like, I must admit, comedy gold for most of the episode.
Yeah, episode 8 was
I it's one of those things of like, you could say a lot of things about this show, but you can't deny that it's well made.
Yeah,
and
with,
it turns out that if you throw enough money at a thing,
right.
Yeah,
it'll be pretty charming and funny.
First half of episode 8 is Takina, the one with the stick up her ass, is like, well, the cafe is getting into the red. We gotta cut our budgets, shoot less bullets, do better cafe stuff, and
right, we gotta
save our yens, and
yes, we gotta make a new dish. We gotta blow it up on social media. we also have to invest in the stock market.
Just wacky 10-12 minute montage, rapid fire montage of like all of their dumb schemes to save / make money, and
immaculately produced comedy bits.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some great anime faces and reactions, and just like very funny, very good.
No, totally. It very much is. And it's, I think in a lot of ways, right, this is another one of those episodes where, at least to me, I go, oh, like, if this had been, like, episode 4 or something,
right,
and, like, set the tone for, like, Lycroris Recoil, I don't know if we would still be, like, so, like, befuddled by what kind of show this show wants to be.
Right.
And then arguably episode 9 comes along. It's like, no, we're still also going to do that stuff too. And it's like, okay, so you really just can't decide.
Yeah, we're going to have
what kind of show this is.
We're going to have half an episode of comedy and like half an episode of like conspiracy thriller, and we're not going to make any effort to really blend the two together.
Nope. And now let's also throw in a nice heaping dash of confronting your mortality.
Ah, yes. Well, yeah, episode 8 ends with Chisato getting captured, right, by the
not even like she just
they've been setting this trap up for like weeks, and it hasn't worked, hasn't happened because she hasn't tripped it yet.
Right, because she keeps putting off her fucking like medical appointment.
Right. And she finally goes in, and we find out that we found out a lot of things, but first of all, her artificial heart gets essentially disabled, right?
Yes.
And going into episode 9, we get a little more of her backstory, that not only does she have an artificial heart, but
apparently it's a super
she
magic,
has one
super special artificial heart that nobody else can make. Only the
and it
special
has to be recharged.
institute.
It has to be recharged regularly, which they cannot do anymore after the events of episode 8. And, she has the heart in the first place because she has anime heart disease. And,
Yep.
Even if she, even if she had the heart, it would only last
but the Weird Allen Institute just has to cultivate her super duper special skill of shooting people, and so they gave her this mega artificial heart, apparently, that no one else can make, longer, because our institute has to cultivate as many supernatural gifts as we can, even if those supernatural gifts are shooting people.
And we figure, let's let her kill as many people as possible until her heart runs out. And I guess,
but then of course the wrinkle in the plan, of course, is that they gave her the heart, and what this does instead is inspire Chisato to become the Mega Genki humanist gunslinger,
right?
That she became, with a strict no killing rule.
And I guess is the So were they basically? Is it basically like because she wasn't killing, they're like, well, pull the plug? Like, is that?
That's the vibe I got.
That kind of feels like what it is. The vibe
I don't think they ever
is either
explicitly say that, but that's what I feel like the implication was.
Yeah, well, for me, I'm of two minds. It is either just simply that, or what it really is that Mr. Yoshi has decided to finally use the heart as leverage.
He'll say, if
right?
you don't, like, if you start killing people like we want, we'll give you a working one.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Like, that's sort of what it feels like. It's basically holding her future hostage, right? Is like, because the whole idea, right, is that in Mr. Yoshi's, like, perception, Chisato in some ways is a failure of her true potential, right? Like, she could become the ultimate John Wick-style assassin if she just merely embraced, taking people's lives.
Right.
And that by disabling her heart and dangling that future in front of her, that perhaps he can finally get her in line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably the bigger brained play there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, although the wrinkle in that is now going to be that at the end of episode 9, Majima kidnaps Mr. Yoshi.
What if her heart
so...
had a battery that constantly ran out, and the only way to fill the battery was the adrenaline rush of taking a life? So the more
what
she
if we just
killed,
go full crank with
the more
this?
fill up the battery. But also, the more she kills, the less of a rush it gives her. The less the bar fills
kill
up.
Even more.
Yeah. She has to kill more.
Well, I don't think we've quite gotten to that point yet,
Okay.
but it might as well be that ridiculous, right?
Right.
What's ridiculous?
Also, I guess we should...
What's ridiculous to me
Sorry.
is, like, my theory was that was not her only robot part, and like that's why she can dodge
Right, I think
bullets
we-
and stuff. I'm like, no,
Right,
no, she could just dodge. She could just dodge bullets. That has nothing to do with.
I mean,
yeah.
let it be said, this is the second character in an anime this year in which we looked at them and said, "Is she a cyborg?"
Right.
Like, I think we are. Look, I think we still all have our fingers crossed that come next year when Birdie Wing comes back,
I hope so.
that like, Eve ggets into an accident and like her skin gets ripped off and there's robot parts underneath
I still
it or
think there's
something.
like a 55% chance that happens, but yes.
There's like a 55%
speaking of-
chance that both of them are robots in Birdie
We
Wing.
cannot talk about Birdie Wing.
Also,
Yeah. Anyway, yes.
we can't talk. Okay, but I will say, we should. I will want to just point out, like, okay, back at episode 8, there is sort of a good moment where Majima confronts Chisato at her
Right.
safe house,
Right.
and at first you're like, oh, really, we're doing this shit again, and then they just go look at like freaking like
Movies.
Die Hard and Equilibrium,
Right.
and then just start talking about freaking early 2000s or 90s action movies for
Yeah.
a bit, which I could appreciate. Also, I guess we should also point out, just because can't get around of it, just the joke that the dish that Takino invented just looks
It's
like,
like a
poop.
bloody
Yes,
poop.
that was a very good.
Like-
that was a very good joke.
Look, toilet humor is childish, but also
Very effective.
Yeah.
it just looks like a poop, which is
Yeah.
pretty funny.
And it's funny because like she doesn't realize it, and then
Everyone
the
else
hacker girl,
does,
like,
and that's why it
the
goes
hacker girl
viral.
makes it go viral. Yeah.
Right.
And she doesn't realize
Hack
why
the Twitter
everybody's
algorithm.
ordering.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will also say it here because I think it's very funny if it's true. There is enough credible evidence that Chisato and Takina's color schemes of their uniforms might be directly inspired by the Bandai Namco game Ace Combat Zero.
Oh,
Hell yeah.
Did you see the thing where when they were showing the social media posts, the names were supposed to be from like Ace Combat 4 or something?
Oh man.
Yes, so there's
Alright.
that too.
Okay.
Yes, I think
If the Belkins are at it.
the fake
That's
Twitter
the
handles.
fucking Belkins are behind the Island Institute. Those fucking assholes.
Yes, and so, which, look, I've had my criticisms of Lycroris Recoil, but if the people working on this anime are Ace Combat fans,
It all goes out the window.
I kind of have to be a lot more forgiving of them now, because if you told me Lycroris Recoil took place in the
Oh,
Strange
that makes
Reel,
sense, actually.
I might believe
Oh, this
you.
all makes sense now, right? Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, what
Kingdom of Aruja
what-
is declared war on the Osean Federation.
one last thing I'll throw in. I will continue to give Lycroris Recoil credit for having 2 adult gay men who are not a joke in the show, but also that they kind of undermine all that by having Takina and Chisato go on a date and nothing happens. So,
Right.
Before
we move on, I have a huge chip on my shoulder about this. Okay. And like a lot of people,
the queer baiting specifically.
No, because a lot of people who are like, oh, why aren't Western critics talking about the beautiful relationship between Chisato and Takina? What? And I'll tell you the reason. The reason is because it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, okay. I do like
their dynamic.
Yes, I do like.
I mean, I wish I agreed with you, but the thing is, I do not like this relationship dynamic where it is like character A meets character B. Character A, for some reason, decides that they are super into character B, even though character B is nothing but a jerk to them, and then continues to shower character B with all sorts of affection until character B somehow comes around and is like, yeah, I guess I like you too, and then we call that a romance. And it's like,
yeah, if you're looking at a romance, it's disappointing. I do kind of like it's the kicking each other in the OP thing, right? Like I do kind of like that. But
I mean, it's the thing of this is what I mean when I say like Lycroris Recoil has purchased its charm, right? Is like if you look at the actual bones of Chisato and Takina's relationship, there's actually not that much there. But when you look at it from the perspective of like how they are animated and what the director has done in depicting them, a lot of it is...
Because if you look at the bones, it is just one-sided, It is just Chisato showers Takina in affection for no reason other than because the plot says she has to. Like...
The thing, this is how do I put this? A lot of, let's say, people learning or teaching writing talk about, for instance, how narratively, a buddy cop show and a romance are the same because they follow the same beats. But, like, in reality, the nuance between the two is very different. And I think that's sort of what we're getting at here is that anyone calling it, like, a... We've watched so much anime. We've all watched so much anime at this point that's, like...
Yes, we have watched too much anime.
We see this stuff and we, like, roll our eyes because we know... We kind of know in our bones that, like, this is just how they do it sometimes, and it's dumb, and it's just how they do it, and we know not to expect anything of it. But then you have people who are, like, maybe less experienced with anime, who see something like this and are like, wow, I don't know what's talking about this, like, great relationship.
I mean, I think, there's another phrase that I've heard to describe this phenomenon, and... It mostly comes up in the discourse of, like, marginalized representation.
Scraps like a feast.
And it is, yes, treating crumbs like a feast. Right? Is like, oh, wow. I mean, I think the most emblematic of this years ago was Yuri on Ice, right? It's like, oh, wow, these guys are kind of holding each other a little bit.
I will say Yuri on Ice's defense, like, there were plenty of interviews with Sayo Yamamoto where she was like, I wanted to go harder and they didn't let me.
Yeah.
I know, but yes. Sure, I respect her intention, but we're talking about the work itself.
I agree.
Like, that is the show that is emblematic of that to me. And I think that, for better or worse, the real joke is that all these people who are like, wow, Lycroris Recoil, look at these gay girls go. Y'all need to be watching. Is what I want to say here.
Yeah, it always comes back to Birdie Wing, but
get you a girlfriend who will say, "I'll kill you." In golf.
The fact that we're circling back around to Birdie Wing is like.
What if Eve had a Cockney accent?
Fuck yeah!
You joke, but I legitimately do think these two shows.
You're completely correct.
Despite the hilarious disparity in the budgets of the two, are of the same or similar
wavelength. Despite all of the money in Lycroris Recoil, I think the queer baiting in Birdie Wing had more concrete results than anything we've seen in Lycroris so far. So,
of course.
And it is somehow less like banal.
But yeah, I guess if we wanted to just wrap it up here on Lycroris Recoil, I think the story of the show will continue to be that, for better or worse, it is eminently enjoyable in specific areas, but I feel like once again it's sort of it's gun shyness about committing to a tone.
Yeah.
I think at this point we probably have to accept is going to follow it all the way to the end.
Oh, absolutely. Right? Yeah, I'm not expecting
Like,
any surprises now at this point, which maybe is why I'm starting to enjoy it a bit more as I shut my brain off more.
Just accepting it for what it is,
but,
right?
You know, it doesn't mean anything has changed or anything. It's just my perspective is almost fully shifted over now to where my expectations are in an appropriate place.
On the floor.
But we'll see. Chisato's not actually going to die, right?
No, she'll be fine.
There's no way.
I would be amazed if this show has the balls.
We need her for season 2.
Yeah, Hideo Kojima's Lycroris Recoil.
Yeah.
Yes, Lycroris Recoil, endorsed by one
yeah.
Hideo Kojima.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. When
a
he starts,
paragon of good taste.
when he starts his new podcast, what are the odds that he's going to start by talking
Non-zero.
about Lycroris Recoil? Yeah.
Damn, he's gonna put us out of business.
Yeah. If Kojima gets into the podcasting business, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, we do have our backlog shows.
This is what you get. Y'all took too long, and now you have to live with the Tomino Power Hour at the very end again.
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
So I did not get to watch Thunderbolt Fantasy, so we nixed that for now.
Oh my
but
goodness. This is
yes.
going long today,
you guys
folks,
wanna-
I guess.
Hey, I got
wanna...
to scream about kids shows for an hour. Now you guys get to scream about kids shows for an hour.
Yeah,
So we've got Xabungle, Dunbine, and L-Gaim here.
yeah,
You guys wanna,
Xabungle, we had...
So thankfully,
Yeah.
I will say I'm not sure why, but we only watched 3 episodes of each this time around.
Okay.
Which means that, to be fair, we will also have less to talk about, thankfully. But
Yeah.
yeah, Eero, you want to start off with Xabungle?
If I can remember what episodes we watched, was in 1911.
All right, so the probably the one episode of the 3 we watched this week for Xabungle is probably the first of the 3 in which it is the crew of the Iron Gear meet a young woman named Maria.
Yes.
Who,
a pacifist.
And this is maybe the episode that has you go, oh, this is where like Amaishi got his entire sense of humor from.
Yes. They meet Maria, a lovely desert flower taking care of orphans next to an
Is
oasis.
she comically poor though?
She lives on her little small farm out in the desert, raises vegetables, and is a pacifist. You know, she tries to sell vegetables. Nobody wants to buy her vegetables because we're a hard-drinking, shooting society. Goons come by to knock over her carts and steal her vegetables. And she's just, fighting's bad. And those guys really do need to eat their vegetables, so it's okay that they're stealing my vegetables. And the crew of the Iron Gear rolls in and meets Maria and sort of stops the goons from kidnapping her and such, and are like, why don't you just shoot those dudes? And Maria says, fighting bad, pacifism good, please don't fight.
And the best part about this is that the character who is primarily questioning Maria's like moral stance is Chill,
It's
who
like 5-year-old
is
child or something.
a 5-year-old child and a member of the Bandits. Who, by the way, I would say at this point in the show has an on-screen kill count of 4 to 7.
Yeah.
Okay. So the child is
And
saying,
Chill
why don't
is
you
like-
Yeah.
murder people?
Yeah, and this 5-year-old child is like, why don't you just kill people who like
Right,
wrong
and
you?
she's like, oh, you poor
Like,
child, you
why
don't
don't you just shoot
understand.
them?
And Chill's just like, I'm great.
Yeah, Chill's like, I'm great. None of my enemies are alive.
And Maria's like, no,
Like,
it's
this is,
possible
like-
to live free from conflict. And Chill's like, no, it's not. Everyone's fighting over there.
Yeah, look at this horrible crap sack world we live in.
So funny.
And the thing that makes it funny is that Maria is played straight, but that makes her even funnier because of the world Xabungle is, right? Like again, the quick and dirty analogy I would use if you have not watched Xabungle is that Xabungle's world is like the first 7 episodes of Gurren Lagann.
Right.
Right? It's like desert apocalypse ruled by bandits. Violence is the only way.
Right.
And it's just the the contrast of just the joke of introducing a character like Maria into the world of Xabungle is in and of itself funny, and then like you throw in the antics that actually happen during the episode.
The Iron Gear is being chased by Gavla, the miss who doesn't miss.
Yes. This is where we now need to mention Tomino has a character named Gable in 2 entirely separate anime.
Oh wait,
directors.
I was gonna say he's not in this anime,
No,
right?
this is Gavla, the miss who doesn't miss. And
A name
Okay.
so
Yes.
good we used it twice.
As opposed to Gabla
Yes.
Gabla the Coming Man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gable, the miss who doesn't miss, is sort of a Doronjo gang style like female warlord.
Okay.
You know, she's got a cat. You know, it's the classic archetype of she's like an older woman and gets very mad when people
Call her Madame Gavlet,
point out
and
her
she
age.
says it's
you
Miss
know,
Gavlet.
she insists that they call call me Miss Gavlet.
Uh-huh.
You know? That sort of character, right? And anyways, like there's some great moments in this fight, like you know,
I need to
again,
take a
like
gift
the
of
whole
that,
like all
actually.
like like Xabungle being a mecha slapstick really works in its favor sometimes, because like there's a good bit in this fight where like Giron in the Xabungle needs to stop this like land battleship from firing all of its cannons. So he's like fucking Goomba stomping on the barrels of these battleship cannons,
Swinging on them and kicking
and like there's a
them.
great one where he swings on one like it's a freaking platformer like swinging bar, and uses his momentum to kick out the barrel of a second cannon before he falls over. And it's like there's like a physicality to it that's it's just emblematic of like Tomino's talents as a director.
Yeah. And then
But yeah, anyways, the episode is especially funny because okay, we can't get into it, but during the same week we watched this episode, we watched episode 5 of season 2 of Primal, which was titled The Primal Theory.
but
I will not get into the details of the Primal Theory, but I'll just say that the episode of that cartoon was about mankind's like inherent violent nature, and how when pushed to the edge, mankind will always devolve into its violent tendencies.
You know, at some point in this battle, Gable, the miss who doesn't miss, ends up, you know, on the ground next to Maria, and she's like, "Oh, it's you! Like, you're that girl's been causing problems. I'm gonna get you, and then I'll get those Iron Gear kids." And Maria picks up a rock and smashes Gable in the head after espousing pacifism. And she's like, "Oh no, what have I done?"
To which Iro and I start hooting like monkeys and shouting, "The Primal Theory!" But anyway,
Excellent.
the rest of the episodes are fine. The last of the 3, Giron and Timp Sharon, the man who killed his parents, get into a really hilariously stupid fight.
They're both losers.
They get into a 1-on-1 duel that I think is emblematic of Xabungle's best qualities, which is just like even the villains are also dipshits.
Definitely.
And like, you know, we're going long, so I will not describe the play-by-play of the fight, but just think of it, it's very like Jackie Chan inspired choreography of like 2 guys in robots constantly fucking up and like falling over while trying to kill each other, and it just works really well. It makes for a very entertaining setup, you know.
Sounds fun.
Like the one thing I'll mention is that like there's a point in the fight where the 2 fall out of their own mechs and then quickly scramble into their rival's mech.
Okay.
To which it is revealed that neither has any fucking clue how to pilot their rival's mech.
Right. That's what I figured. Great.
And so they eventually get out again and beat each other with sticks before scrambling back into their original mech. It's very well done.
Very good.
Yeah, as for Dunbine, Dunbine continues to be the story of failure.
Yeah, speaking of failure,
In these last 3 episodes, they have still not really achieved any of their stated goals.
They've screwed up every single episode. I think possibly like my favorite version of this is they spend a whole episode because they have their little fairy buddy, and they're like, "Cham Fao, won't the Mi Ferrario fairies help us in against this war of conquest?" And she's like, "Probably not. You shouldn't go there." And they say, we're gonna go to the land of the Fae and ask the fairies to help us because they use their magic to drag us here from Earth. They gotta do something. They spend like 15 minutes of this episode just like piling through like dimensional barriers and storms and whatever other magic shit the fairies all have to protect their realm. Finally get through and are like, go to the queen of the fairies or whatever, and are like, please, don't you have any responsibility in this? Won't you help us? And
Fuck no.
she's just like, no, get out, and magically transports them out.
Oh, it's so emblematic of Dunbine's whole vibe. Just the characters try to do something for the first 15 minutes, and then it fails for one reason or another.
Yeah, just.
But yeah, the rest of the episodes are kind of like that. You know, it's just it's continuing the fight against Drake Luft. You know, it kind of feels like a Fire Emblem campaign that's going really badly.
Yeah.
There is one thing that happens in the second of these 3 episodes we watch, which is maybe the rawest depiction of military action against civilians that was probably acceptable in 1984. Like, there is a, like basically Drake Luft, the baddies' forces are like, I mean, the implication is that they are raping and pillaging this, like, the settlement, you know, doing what soldiers in the medieval times did, right? You know, cutting down civilians, dragging women into the streets, that sort of thing. And it all culminates in a section where, like, this woman is running with her, like, infant child bundled up with her. And a dude just seemingly spears the baby.
Oh, God.
Throws a spear,
like,
right?
straight up on... Yeah, and it's only revealed at the last second that the spear just barely, like, missed the baby in the bundle.
Then he goes,
Yeah.
is my aim good?
Did the editor cut that one last second or something?
But there is definitely an element of Tomino is like... And because it's Tomino, right, you sort of, like, you're ready for it because you have experience with who he is as a director. And so there is, like, a solid 2 to 5 seconds where me and Ira are like...
Yeah.
Did he...
Like, what?
Just
No,
like,
stop.
Oh my god, did he just kill a baby on screen?
Yeah. Too many babies dying in this podcast.
Yeah.
But
What about babies?
Got any babies?
But, yeah, that's Dunbine. I don't know, man. Like, I don't want to hate... Dunbine's got some good stuff going on. They do the joke again of Cham Phao is a bird that doesn't know what glass is and crashes into the canopy of a ship again. But, you know, Dunbine is Dunbine, you know. As for L-Gaim, L-Gaim, where does one even start with heavy metal L-Gaim?
Where do we start with L-Gaim?
kind of wild things happened.
Because they've sort of joined up with Stella Koban's Resistance. Great little bit. I don't remember which episode this is in, but they're talking to Stella Koban, leader of the Resistance, and they're like, "So how'd you get started in the rebels business?" And he's like, "I used to be a nobleman, and now that Emperor Poseidon controls everything, I'm not a nobleman anymore, and I miss being rich and important. So I started a rebel."
His literal motivation for leading the Resistance is that he wants to be the one wearing the boot.
Right. Interesting.
But yeah, so I guess I don't know.
Right.
Gahal Lessie, the lady, a military officer from the baddies, you know, it finally joins the heroes after being disgraced by her military. It very much is a very like Tomino like. It's very much it very much feels like, for better or worse, a classic Tomino woman moment sort of thing. Of, like, Gahal Lessie is briefly embarrassed and thus decides to just defect from the military she has served for most of her life.
She's like, "Man,
it's
those
very
guys,
just like,
those guys
how
were such
dare you
jerks.
embarrass me?
Those guys are such jerks. I'll completely turn coat."
Yeah, but it is not the first, nor will it be the last time in Tomino's directing history in which a character is slighted for a minor reason and decides to completely, radically shift their worldview.
Gavlik Gablet is still out coming after them every week. Gavlik Gablet, the coming man.
Yeah. Yes, and Gavlik Gablet sort of reveals in these 3 episodes that he's actually pretty clever for being the kind of foppish, noble dipshit that he is. Like, he sets up some legitimately good traps against Daba, and it's like, it's actually kind of fun, because on one hand, you look at Gable, and you're like, alright, what are you up to this time? Mm-hmm. But then a couple of times, he actually gets one up on Daba My Road in a way that makes you go, huh. Alright, he's not all
maybe Gable has something. Gable the Coming Man has something to him, not to be confused with Gable the Miss Who Doesn't Miss.
Yes. Other than that, I feel like the theme of these 3 episodes is just like, now that Gaha Lisi has joined the crew, they're very much leaning into the love triangle of both Lisi and Amu, the other female character, are constantly vying for Daba's attention. And they're sort of leaning into the slapstick element of, like, I guess, I was going to say one is the Betty and the other is the Veronica, but
not even.
You can make a pretty good argument that they are both Veronica.
Yeah.
But, it's basically like they're getting into these increasingly petty spats to earn Daba's attention. And the joke is mostly that Amu's like attempts to earn Daba's attention are getting increasingly petty and stupid, and thus less successful. And Lisi is the Luigi in the Mario Party situation of all she has to do is stand still, and she's kind of winning this love triangle
Amu
by default.
Just keeps doing some harebrained scheme that fucks up, right?
Yes, that self-sabotages either her or the entire group. Like, the last of the 3 episodes could basically be summarized as everything is Amu's fault. Which, don't need to get into it, but basically it's just a sequence of schemes, one after the other, constantly failing because...
Amu decides to do something and then gets captured or something like that.
Yes.
They joined the Noble Rebels after going through that whole ass thing to bring Commander his stupid cash card, and then their first mission with the Nobles is, hey, go pick up the weapons for us at Commandra's place.
Yes.
So they have to go to Commandra, and he's like, I'm sure an arms dealer is on to both sides. And they're just like, oh, fuck you, Commandra.
To be fair, Commander seemed to be very forgiving of Daba Myro.
Yeah, he's like, I like your gumption, kid.
Right. I remember that, yeah.
But, it's not as straight comedic as Xabungle.
Way more than we thought.
Like, L-Gaim is much more slapstick than we may have initially thought. Again, we've mentioned before that, for a show being worked on by Nagano, who is a very famously pretty self-serious mecha designer and writer.
Still,
L-Gaim being as funny as it is just continues to surprise and amuse and delight us, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is it still as chaotic as it was in the beginning, or is it...
Oh yeah,
okay.
No, we've been recently introduced to, I guess, who's probably going to be our next big rival for a while, is Nemo Han, who I can only describe as sort of a hair metal Amazon.
She looks like she walked out of Bubblegum Crisis.
Yes. Excellent. Do they still do the next episode, show the character and their name?
It hasn't been characters for a while, but they've done areas and mechs.
Okay.
Yes, they always find something to introduce for the next episode.
Right.
And I don't know, just that show continues to be,
even though it's
immensely chaotic, but a very good
even
time
though it's the
process.
Second Gable.
Yes. Now that you know,
Gable the second is far superior to.
You might say Gable missed so that Gable could come.
All right, we need to end this.
Well, there's our podcast title.
We need to end this episode on that note. All right. Well, bit of a long one here, but thank you all for listening at this point. I'm glad we got it all in. And we can wrap up with our normal housekeeping. So you can check us out at theglorioblog.com. Follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher. Leave us a 5-star or whatever rating
No, 5 stars only.
Review.
Maximum rating.
I don't know if they all use 5 stars or whatever. I know iTunes
the highest
does,
rating possible.
But whatever the highest rating possible is. And of course, you can check us out on YouTube. You can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Leave us a comment and tell us how good our opinions of anime are. I don't know, but yeah. And that'll do it. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
All part of protocol, innit?